Live.
Okay, I've got a couple minutes after 6, so let me go ahead and get started. The Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Westminster is now in session. Thursday, July 5th, 2022, here in City Hall. Call to order for all here. First order of business is approval of our meeting summary from our June 21st meeting. Have board members had a chance to read the summary, and do I have a motion?
Did we have a change that you want to make, Mark, or put our names in?
No, so we added the names to
So
the motion, so that's already been
Then,
done.
okay, I move that we measure it.
Have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. So approved. Do you want me to wait before we sign?
Yes,
Okay. Let's do introductions around. I'm Ed Kramer, Chair of the Board.
Larry Barant, Vice Chair.
Brenda Frazier, board member.
Karen Ruff, board attorney.
and Mark Depot, the Director of Community Planning and Development for the city.
And as we go through the cases, and we have 3 tonight, so we'll keep them in order, starting with case 22-6. And as those who are making application and any of their witnesses, we will swear you in at that time and do it on a case-by-case basis. So tonight we will proceed with case number 22-6, which is a special exception request. An application by Stacy Baxter with Christiana Homeschool, the applicant, and Perfect Score Real Estate LLC, the property owner, requesting special exception approval to operate a daycare facility use pursuant to City Ordinance Sections 164-54A, 164-41A, parent 19, closed parent, at 1234 Tech Court in Westminster, Maryland. So that's case number 1. We'll start off by asking Mr. Depot for comments on the city's summary.
Thank you. For the record, Mark Depot, the Director of Community Planning and Development. On June 10th, 2022, the applicant and petitioner, as stated by the chair, submitted an application to the board for the property located at 1234 Tech Court, Westminster, Maryland, hereafter referred to as the property, requesting a special exception to operate a daycare facility use. The property is located in the IR zoning district, and pursuant to zoning ordinance section 164-54A and 41A19, a daycare facility use is a special exception use in the IR industrial zone. The property again is IR's district, and it's located in West Branch Trade Center development. The Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation records indicate the property is owned by Perfect Score Real Estate LLC. The property is located in the southwest quadrant of the West Branch Road and Tech Court intersection. The property is currently developed with a 1-story, 84,000 square feet building. The property provides 3 access points to Tech Court and one access point to West Branch Road. And you can see this is access to West Branch, and then there's 3 access points. The property is surrounded on the north, south, and east by the IR restricted industrial zone, and on the west by the PI planned industrial zone, all zoning districts in the city. On July 1, 2022, the board agenda and Board of Zoning Appeals variance case number 22-6 application and staff report was posted on the City of Westminster website for public view. The notice of public hearing for case 22-6 was advertised Wednesday, June 15th and Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022 in the Carroll County Times. The property was posted stating the time, date, place, and purpose of the case. And on June 20th, 2022, the pre-hearing statement was forwarded to the board by email. Pursuant to zoning ordinance sections 164, 54A, 41A19, again, daycare facility is a special exception use. Daycare facility is defined as a place used for the reception or care for compensation of a child or children under 18 years of age or elderly persons over the age of 60 years of age for any part of a 24-hour period. The applicant is proposing to use 16,000 square feet of the existing 84,000 square feet one-story building at the property for a daycare facility. The applicant states that the remainder of the building, or 68,000 square feet, is used by a glass factory, 310 Tempering. Pursuant to section 164, 161A2, the Board of Zoning Appeals is empowered to hear and decide special exceptions for such exceptions, as such exceptions are authorized by this chapter. Pursuant to 164, 170A, the board may grant a special exception when it finds from a preponderance of the evidence of record that the request satisfies 3 conditions for granting of a special exception. The applicant has provided a pre-hearing statement with exhibits for the proposed daycare center. This is exhibit 6 for the board's consideration. And just to backtrack, I apologize. I would like to enter the record exhibit 1, which is a staff report, and exhibits also listed on the front page of the staff report 2 through 6. I'm not sure if I could name each one, Karen, or is that adequate?
So technically, I would like to see the application as a separate exhibit. And then the pre-hearing statement is a separate exhibit. And then,
And they have that.
and
So the application is a separate, yeah, so I did list. Do you want me to list all the exhibits just for the record?
I would.
Okay. So again, exhibit 1 is the staff report dated July 5, 2022. Exhibit 2 is the Board of Zoning Appeals application. 3, the SSTAT real property search information. 4, the pre-hearing statement narrative. 5, map of adjacent properties. And 6, pre-hearing statement with exhibits provided by the applicant. So with that, the applicant has provided, again, the pre-hearing statement with exhibits, that is exhibit 6 for the board's consideration. The 2009 comprehensive plan sets goals that may be applicable to the proposed daycare facility use. Goal E2, to support a diversified and stable economic environment that will enhance the standard of living of all citizens and be compatible with the municipal growth element. Zoning administration does not have any concerns about the use adversely affecting the health or safety of the residents or workers in the area. The property is not adjacent to any residential property and is located within the West Branch Trade Center industrial development. Zoning administration is concerned with the effect of other businesses and uses at the property, how those businesses may affect the proposed daycare center use. So it's more of a reverse concern. So I just want to maybe discussion by the applicant, or recommend some discussion by the applicant about its use to the current use that's out there at the property. Zoning administration confirms that Christiana Homeschool did submit a water and sewer allocation application, WSA 2241, for a 16,000 square feet daycare facility. In an email on May 26, 2022 from Stacy Baxter, she states that we, the Christiana Homeschool, have a maximum of 50 employees on site at a time and 145 children. Staff recommends that the applicant state that for the record. Zone administration, looking at the amount of students and how we calculate the amount of water needed, approximately 2,175 gallons per day is required. And at this time, zone administration has not allocated the water for the proposed daycare use. There is water available for this year and next year that exceed the amount necessary, but again, we just have not allocated the use as part of the process for allocation. Zoning administration does not have any concerns about the use being detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties again, or the general neighborhood to change the character of the general neighborhood in which the use is proposed. The use is primarily or entirely within the building, and therefore there's no external activity that would be impacting the neighborhood. And there are no special provisions for this use contained in the zoning ordinance. Some other elements that we looked at was parking and signage. Approximately 86 parking spaces are required for the proposed daycare facility. If the requested special exception is approved by the board, parking space requirements will be further reviewed at the site development plan stage of the process. And the applicant has stated that no signage is being proposed this time for the use, but they are aware of the signage regulations. And with that, zoning administration recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals carefully review the special exception request and provide a finding of fact to either approve with conditions, or disapprove the applicant's request with a further condition that the applicant continue to work with the city, with Department of Community Plan Development and the water and sewer allocation application. And with that, that's my report. I'm available for any questions.
None for me.
Any questions, Jeff?
The board has no questions on the staff summary. At this point, there are questions that are going to arise a little later, I believe. So you want to enter that as Exhibit 2? That's where we are? Staff summary?
I'm sorry.
The application is normally Exhibit 1 and the staff summaries Exhibit 2. Is that where we are?
The staff summary was, the staff report was exhibit 1.
1, okay.
Application 2, and he put those in the record.
All right, so we're already into it. Okay. All right, at this point, I would like to swear the applicants and anybody who's going to speak for the applicant in testimony otherwise, all at one time, if you will raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Before anyone speaks in whatever order you choose, introduce yourself. Do we need name and address too? I believe, Mark, I thought we got it on the sheet.
Yes, we do.
And, okay, and then state what your position is in presenting your case. So we'll turn it over to you.
I'm Stacy Baxter. I am the financial and facility director for Christiana Homeschool.
Okay,
I'm Tracy Willett. I'm the chair of the board of directors of Christiana Homeschool.
thank you.
Joseph Dion. I'm a parent of children there, and I'm also an attorney.
Okay, are you going to lead, Stacy?
I will.
All right, thank you.
So I'm just going to briefly read some of what I put in the pre-hearing statement. First of all, thank you for having us tonight. Thank you guys for taking out the time to come here. So Christiana Homeschool is a daycare that is a tutoring service helping parents with their homeschool child's education. We're not a school, we're not accredited. We offer great suggestions, but the parent has the final say in grading, and parents work with a separate umbrella group or county to submit grades and credits for their graduation. At any given time, half of our parents are on site tutoring, helping tutors, helping students. We are not the primary education for the child, that we just supplement what the parents are doing at home, but they do pay us for our services. The reason for looking at Tech Court is we need more space. And so we're looking to rent the 16,000 square feet of the building at Tech Court. And the remainder of the building, like Mark said, would be used for 310 Tempering, which is the owner of the building. And then the proposed location is IR, and we are surrounded by other industrial commercial with another exception, a special exception for a daycare that's there. So we ask that you grant our request for a daycare, and thank you for the time. And if you have any questions.
I have a question. This address immediately brought back memories. I've been at this a long time. I think we've had at least 2, if not 3, and maybe more cases all involving the Tech Court facility out there. Can you just explain how, even though it's zoned appropriately for the use you want to do there, how that's going to work out for you in terms of the other existing business that's in that building?
So Joseph Dion, do you need my address?
Yes.
That's okay. Yeah, it's 208 Singer Road. It's New Freedom, PA. You have that, Mark?
Yes.
Perfect. So I actually just drove by there. I just drove through there. And the way in which it's structured, so the max capacity, like, for example, I think Stacy stated there was 50 parking spots needed for, okay. It's not going to be 50 parking spots. It's going to, could get up to 50 parking, but that wouldn't be the case. There's a drop-off time, there's a pickup time. Because there is more than one entrance, one exit, it would be one-way traffic. That traffic would be stabilized because it's how they currently do it. So you're literally looking at 10 to 15 minutes worth of, I guess you would call heavy traffic through a parking lot. They do walkie-talkie. I mean, they do this so that there wouldn't be that much of a disruption as far as the neighborhood is.
They is the school.
Christianity.
You're right, Christiana Homeschool, right. That's the way it currently works. So I'm assuming they're going to keep with the same structure. And that is that the kids are not released until they are, the vehicle is spotted with a nice big name tag in the front window. And then they're on a walkie-talkie and those kids are released at that point in time. So it's literally, they drive up, they pick up or they drop off and they leave through the same spot. Because of the nature of the entity, because of the nature of homeschool, Christiana Homeschool, there is not going to be an exact time. It's going to be in the morning, generally as a drop off. You're going to have some that stagger in later. And then as far as the pickup is, well, currently it's 3:30. I would assume it's going to stay that way.
What are the staggered times in the morning?
Yeah, it's,
Anywhere from 8 to 9.
yeah,
Okay. And then the afternoon, if it
it's 3:30.
to something else or just 3:30?
No, it's 3:30, right? Isn't
It's
that-
generally through, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess my question is more to how this school is going to sit within that facility, given the other industry that's going on there.
So it's completely separated, right?
Mhm.
There's security, locked doors between the actual facility, the tempering.
So on this
Temporary.
little small picture that we have,
Mhm.
Yeah, so you can't see it, but the highlighted area, which is, it's not highlighted, and it was colored when I sent it, but can I get up and?
yeah, fine. I saw it.
Yeah.
I just wanted,
So, yeah, so that part is the part we're renting, the rest is the warehouse, and there are secure, electric secured locked doors between the two.
okay,
um, That the warehouse workers cannot come in and our students cannot go into the warehouse.
all right.
This was an initial concern for us as well, which is the reason why we triple checked this.
There's separate entrances and exits for their business and separate for ours. They even would park on this side. and
I was gonna say,
park on
even
that side.
The parking
Yeah.
lot looks like it's
Okay.
segregated.
So you're going to be entering from this side, the right-hand side on this picture,
No, the left-hand side.
left-hand side?
Yeah, so that bigger parking lot would be the one that we would utilize.
And there's a loop, like a half a loop in the
Yeah.
front of the building for drop off and pickup.
Okay,
So it's actually ideal for that circumstance, for security reasons, to cut down on traffic and for the safety of the kids.
and then your facility is going to be completely enclosed and separated from what else is within that big
Correct.
structure?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. I'm just recalling, like I said, previous instances of that building and how it was outlined, and how it's been outlined in the past, and this was a very small drawing for me anyway. So, all right, go ahead with whatever else you want to.
So that was all that we had, and happy to answer questions.
Board members have any?
I do have a question. I understand that obviously the concept of picking up and dropping off, but you mentioned, and I'm not very clear exactly on the business, it's not something I'm overly familiar with, but you were saying half of the parents at a time, at all times, about half will be there.
Right, so some, like I said, they help with tutoring, so it depends on the time of day. And so they are, some are coming and some are leaving, and at different times of the day, but usually it's about half of them are there.
And there's 50 employees.
Correct.
Okay, plus half the parents.
No,
The parents are the employees.
Okay,
Sorry.
got it. Okay, it's making more sense to me.
Or is it, it could be up to 50?
It's up to 50, like
Yeah.
it's lower than 50 currently.
So you have, okay, so the parents are the employees that are helping, you're helping them with their homeschooling
Correct.
processes. Okay. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're currently operating, you say you're operating in a facility now and you want bigger space. And where are you operating now?
Crosswind Church, off of Luckaball Mill Road.
Okay, how much space do you have there?
So we have about 10,000 square feet there.
10,000?
We're in this predicament because of COVID.
Okay,
Really, I mean, there's a lot of parents out there that have been affected by this change. So they're looking for all their alternatives for their kids, and jobs are changing. So that's why we've outgrown Crosswind.
and what kind of services are you say you're supplemental to the homeschooling, but you're tutoring, correct?
Yes.
And what type of tutoring do you do?
It's around all subjects, like whatever the child needs help with is what we offer.
Okay,
Specifically, we support parents who choose to educate their children according to a classical tradition. So we offer tutoring services in Latin, in grammar, in writing, in mathematics, in science.
so but you are operating there as Christiana Homeschool Academy, so,
So our technical name is that years ago, the Department of Education told us we couldn't use academy in our name because we're not a school. And
It's
so
not,
we
can't legally be considered a
Right.
school, right?
So we removed academy from our website, but they allowed us to legally keep it so that we didn't have to go through the whole name change. But we call ourselves Christiana Homeschool.
okay. Looking at your interior warehouse design there, it looks like you're taking out some weight-bearing walls. Are those going to be tutoring rooms for your
Yes.
students? Okay, and they'll be dependent on various grades, you know, I guess, learning levels, whatever.
Yes,
So you're really supplementing the teaching of their parents.
correct.
Okay,
Yeah, we have certain parents who, like, for example, have a background, let's say, for example, in Latin. So they're going to help those students who are currently doing,
Yeah.
studying that. Yeah, that's how it will work out.
I guess my main concern here is that you're asking for a daycare center special exception, but from what your testimony is and what your documents show, you're really more of a supplemental school to this homeschool program of the parents. And it seems to me that the standards for looking at special exception for, in this particular district, that the standards for being an educational program or a tutoring program or a teaching facility would be different than just a daycare center. And there's different hoops you would have to go through to be that type of facility than just a simple daycare center. So I guess I'm wondering whether maybe you asked for the wrong relief from this board. It seems to me that you ought to be applying for a school special exception as opposed to a daycare special exception.
So there are 2 points on that. First of all, I mean, if you're a parent of a teenage boy, you would never call an education, it's just a daycare center. But that point being said, I'm not trying to be too facetious on that point, but like, if you ask the parents, they would be very, very clear with you that no, absolutely not. They are the primary educators.
No, I understand.
I know. So if they are not teachers, they cannot be, in fact, many of them don't have, they don't have a background in teaching.
They're
They are-
instructing.
They are assisting. That is correct. I would agree with that.
According to your own.
Yes, I understand, but I think that we have to be, I don't want to split too many hairs, but we have to be really careful because that is not the way in which they legally understand themselves to be. And the parents are very clear that they are the primary educators. And I would say that as well. So yes, they are, you could say that at times they would be instructing, but that's not necessarily the case. That's not always going to be the case.
Further, we do not issue
Question.
grades,
Oh, I am,
issue diplomas.
I understand that.
Credits.
What my concern is in terms of the standards of proof that this board needs to receive. The hoops that you have to go through in terms of us granting
Yeah.
a special exception. To me, and maybe I should turn to counsel on this. If they were filing for a special exception as a educational center or tutoring center or school or whatever, would their hoops be different than this particular for a daycare special exception?
Well, so generally, no, the question is whether in the zone, and I'm gonna look to Mark regarding this, because he knows it much better than I do. In the zone, is there a use that's permitted that more closely resembles what they're doing as fleshed out by the board member?
We've had several discussions and emails back and forth prior to submission of the application to determine what the use was. Being that they're not a school, quote unquote, a school, they're not certified as a school, state doesn't recognize them as a school. And the way they function, the drop off pickup, and I was concentrating on the children being dropped off and picked up, that a determination was already made that what they're proposing, how they operate, how this particular business operates is a daycare facility under the ordinance. So they were, so it's again, they're requesting daycare special exception.
Because while we do have parents that stay on site to help in the tutoring services, there are also parents like Mr. Dion who just drop their kids off so they can go to work and still be able to have that homeschool ability
And
and work
I
too.
do want to also point out, it is a little bit of a problem to identify them as actual tutors, because an actual professional tutor brings along with it certain types of credentials. I'll be the first one to say, I know for a fact that many of the parents who are assisting with the education, they do not have those credentials. So I just want to be really clear that even calling it a tutoring service is a little bit problematic, depending on the grade, depending on the individual who's.
But you call yourself a tutoring service. I have no problem. I mean, conceptually, I have no problem. You know, if your landlord is happy and you're happy and everything like that. I just don't think you've come through with the proper application, I guess. And I would have no problem, dismissing it without prejudice and coming back and submitting it, even though, maybe Mark and I disagree in terms of just being daycare. I mean, I've never heard of a 16,000 square foot daycare center in the middle of a glass factory, but here it is. But I still feel with the tutoring and whatever, there's a lot of services that are going on there, then I would conceptually see at a daycare center. I think there's more to what you're offering, which is good. I think that, I was public school, but I made it. So, but I know for a lot of families, it's important, but, and you're supplementing that. So
I think that right now, especially in the state of Maryland, I think we could find, and particularly since COVID, that we're going to see a lot more daycare centers who are offering more services than just simply babysitting kids. And
which is fine.
Yeah, it is. But I'm saying, but are they actually tutoring? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's a question of semantics, but I do think though, when it really comes down to it, that's exactly where we're headed in the future.
Could I ask what the ages are of your students that are there?
Although kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade.
Oh, there's even preschools, right?
Oh, preschool,
Yeah,
yes.
we have.
Sorry.
So you do
Yes.
both, like
Oh,
you
yeah.
have 4-year-olds and 18-year-olds.
I think there's even some 2-year-olds.
Maybe it would help, at least it would for me, if you could describe what a typical day looks like. From the time that the adults and the children arrive, and what happens in the facility in terms of what a typical day looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I can explain from my perspective as a parent. You drop the kids off, they usually start off with all of them together. They have a prayer because it's a Christian entity. And then they're split off in groups. They're split off in different age groups and grades. And they do have a certain subject. Some of them don't have a subject. They'll have what you would call in a typical school, it'd be like a study hall where they just simply do their own work at that particular point in time. And they usually try and keep the groups to 12 people, 12 kids or less with each parent. And that's usually what it is. And they do have structured, it is, where they have different subjects that are being tutored at any particular point in time. Some of them are 2 hours long. Some of them are, I think some of them are less than
Even a half an hour.
Yeah, even a half an hour. Yeah.
So given the numbers that you help me out a little further here, I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm just trying to understand how this functions, to Larry's point, actually. In terms of schooling versus daycare. And you say you have a maximum of 50 employees or parents. It's that word, we'll use that word, parents, on site at any time with 145 children. That's almost 200 people in this facility. The number of rooms, the way it's broken out by ages, maybe it would help if you could tell me the age breakdowns, generally speaking.
We typically do it by grades like you would in public school.
Okay.
And so it's, going to be preschool, kindergarten first. So it's
Okay.
it's the ages now, not all of them fall in those ages.
What's your biggest group?
I mean, it's definitely in the lower grades, like first, second, third age group. But it's our parents are the ones that kind of decide, you might see a 5-year-old in first grade if they're really advanced. It's not strictly done by age like you would in a public
For
school.
example, there were 14 kids in our kindergarten class this year, my daughter being one of them, who wouldn't have gotten in kindergarten in public school because she was young. She did quite well.
Good.
Yeah. So it just depends on the needs of the kids.
So can you describe a typical day a little further in terms of you got different rooms for different age groups. There are separate activity periods versus times when they're actually being tutored, if I can use that word, in certain things. Just describe a little
Yeah,
more.
like, so for example, in the high school, I think my daughter will be reading what is she reading this coming year?
Dante, I think.
Dante, right? So they'll be reading that's at home, right? But then they get together and they discuss that for a period of time with those who are, I guess it's 11th grade, but I don't know necessarily if all of them are 11th graders. Is that? Yeah, I think they are.
Should be.
So they would do that, twice a week in the afternoon. So that would be led by a parent who is obviously familiar with that book. So yeah, I mean, that would be a typical class, if you want to call it that, right? So, and it's staggered through. They do have a schedule that they keep. The schedule fluctuates a little bit depending on, parent availability and that type of thing, but that's usually how it's structured. But the actual, like the grading and all of that, that's done through the state. We actually have, a representative in Pennsylvania. You have someone who actually comes to your house and you review everything that you're doing either at home or here at the facility.
And I would maybe clarify the difference, like we don't spend all day tutoring the kids. Like he said, that there's classes where they've read something at home and they're just getting together with other students who have read that same thing and are collaborating. And there's a parent that would be our tutor, but it's kind of like the moderator of the class and saying, okay, how did we feel about this? So it's not just my child reading at home and discussing with me, they're discussing with their peers. And so it's not all strictly, there's not a parent standing up in front of the room, dictating information to them all the day long. And then, of course, we do have a lunch time period. We do have recess. We do They take breaks where they go outside and they run and they play, or if it's bad weather, we keep them inside. And so it's not 8 hours of instructional tutoring, I guess you could say.
Okay. You mentioned another aspect here now too, in terms of outside activity. I didn't see anything in the application that talked about outside activity relative to this facility. Where does that happen?
So on this one, I think I did mention that there would be a playground.
Did I miss it?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember one sentence.
Yeah, so out of if you're facing the building, it's to the right, there's a very large grass area. And that we have talked with the owners about. We have a current playground at our facility now, that we would bring that with us and fence it all in. So that way, kids aren't wandering anywhere. They're all in the fenced in area.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have any other questions.
I have actually not, are your typical students, kids coming 5 days a week? Is it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Right now, it's 2 days a week. It's Monday and Wednesday. That might expand. Is that right? That's the plan. So there could be extra days, but it currently right now it's Monday and
It's
Wednesday.
not-
We open Mondays and Wednesdays.
Correct. Yes, by legally and to homeschool, the parent has to do more than 50% of.
That's
the
what's
school.
gonna be my question. That's why I was a
Yes,
little
yes,
confused on how
sorry,
this-
that was-
That's okay. I just.
Yeah, so if we do expand, it would be a separate program. We'd operate on a Tuesday and Thursday. Because
It'd be
Of separate.
we have wait lists now that we just can't fit in because we're not going to expand our current size students. So.
I mean,
Right.
I had written down the same question that Larry did, and to my mind, but I'm trusting Mark that he's vetted this to a point where this is the best fit. We can't, I mean, there's always stuff that doesn't fit in a certain box of what category you put in that, but I also, because even saying it now, you're only open Monday, Wednesdays for that specific purpose. It's definitely an education center, but it's not the traditional legal licensed education center. So where does it fit? So that's where.
Yeah,
Because I will mention, like across the street, there is a Celebrate, which is a daycare, but they offer instruction as well. And so, that's what when we were talking with Mark as kind of like, how do we fit in? That was, something that we looked at.
Exactly. That came before the Board of Zoning Appeals as a special exception in the IR district as well. So that's what we did through all the emails and discussions, how they operate. Again, the determination was made as a daycare facility, similar to other daycare facilities we have. I think the odd aspect of it is that tutoring portion that it's hard to get past, but again, the majority of the work is done at home. It's an offshoot of the primary business or use of homeschooling at the house. I wasn't aware of the grades being provided. I was told that just happened at the house. I would say it shouldn't happen at this.
no, it doesn't happen at the
Shouldn't-
site.
Yeah,
Yeah,
anybody
Yeah.
coming in for grade purposes, that should be at the house, not.
Right.
But that is.
Yeah.
that's also under Pennsylvania law. It's the same thing. They're very clear on that it's up to the parents to provide that because it's not an accredited education center.
Okay, and I think Brenda hit the nail on the head. When you look at our ordinance and it's antiquated and you look at the definition of school, which is a school site of 30 acres for it doesn't fit in the school definition. If you look at the daycare definition, other uses and how we've allowed other daycare facilities in the city that do allow beyond just caring of children, there are educational programs occurring. It fits by this ordinance. The determination again was made that this is as they operate and as explained was a daycare facility.
If somebody comes looking for a tutoring center and they're calling it a tutoring center, would that have a bucket of its own? I'm sorry, maybe I'm not allowed to ask these questions.
There you are.
Okay. I'm asking Mark.
We have trade schools and those type of centers are more geared towards athletic elements. So again, it doesn't fit perfectly, but a use that again is growing and changing, and we have allowed similar activity in the daycare facility. The determination was made it's a daycare facility.
Thank you.
So may I ask
Yes,
a question? Because
please.
now you've opened the door to something but if you have a list of uses that are permitted in the zoning ordinance, if a use is not listed, it's not permitted, right? Now I'm gonna look, most
Yes and no.
jurisdictions have that. I just don't know if we have that
However, the
Language.
zoning administrator has the authority to interpret the ordinance, and if there's a use that's similar to or considered to be that use, the determination can be made that says, yes, this is that. Again, the definition for daycare facility is not very specific. I mean, it meets the definition of caring for compensation children under 18 within a 24-hour period.
No,
So,
I just
yeah.
don't want the board to be under the impression that if something were to come to you and it doesn't technically fit here, you can try to make it fit there. The correct way to do it would be to go to the legislative body and say, we had an application for this. We don't see that it fits. We would ask that you amend the code to allow that use. But more to your question previously, I tried to look and see where a school would be a special exception use to see if there would be any special requirements. So if you look at section 164:30, which is under the residential zone, R 10,000, the special exception, one of them that's listed is schools, including nursery schools, but not including colleges or universities, and daycare facilities for up to 8 children or elderly persons. So within that, there are some requirements with dimensional things and setbacks, but not necessarily because of the school, but you'll see that the school has some parameters there. And then if you look at 164:47, I'm trying to bear with me for 1 second, doing it on my phone isn't that, which is the DB Downtown Business District, for example. When you look at, where did it go? 40, oh, I'm sorry. 47. It's the CB Central District. And so a use permitted there, by the way, daycare facilities is permitted there. And the schools, businesses, dance, music, trade, or other of a commercial nature. So to answer your question about whether there are any particular requirements that apply to this, to a school, I can't really say without knowing the zone in which it's located,
Okay.
to then look up and see if it's permitted or special exception and whether there are any restrictions in that way.
But if I may, in all due respect, it's irrelevant. The determination was already made. It's a thing decided. The zone administrator made the determination that the use as described is a daycare facility. So you may have questions about the operation. It does seem like a school, maybe some of the operations do. At the end of the day, the determination was provided.
So we can't disagree with the zoning administrator.
No, you can, with the determination, once a determination is made, it would have had to have been appealed and brought before you as somebody appealing that determination.
Is that correct, Madam Counsel?
But this is before them to decide right now. I think that it is up to them.
It is not,
to decide.
it's the decision was already made. What they're requesting, how they presented it was deemed a daycare facility. And that's what they're asking for a special exception for as determined by the zoning administrator. So again, it is a daycare facility as they're describing it.
Well, okay. Let me just say, I can't wait to have you up and operating, but I'm looking long-term to this board and to the city's, responsibilities as well. And there is, the main purpose of what you're doing, and it's a good purpose, is to supplement the education of kids who are homeschooled. And my problem is trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, which is what the zoning administrator has done. And, so whatever decision I come to, don't take it personal. Okay.
We are unique.
You are, and that's the problem, because everybody's said, Mark has said, you've said, I think we all have said, the landscape for education is changing in large part because of the COVID pandemic and everything. But I don't want us as a board to be caught short of approving something which may seem logical at this point, but down the road, somebody's going to take, well, they said it, for this group, it's okay for us. And, and we're kind of caught in a bind as to how, unless there's legislation to fill in that hole, which I hope there is at some point. I just really have trouble with, not with your decision, maybe with, Mark's decision, but we've disagreed more than once anyway, but I just so don't take it personal if I take a different position, that's all.
Do you have concerns though, as far as, let's say we, move forward, you're calling it a school, which is fine, but like, what are your concerns with that? Is it just that it sets precedent? Is that what we're?
That's part of it, and part of it is you are primarily a teaching facility as opposed to as daycare is, at least in my experience, what's you were talking about a daycare center, professional.
Oh, Celebrate.
Celebrate and the, home daycares and stuff like that. This goes beyond what we have experienced as a board here, at least this board since I've been on it. And I just don't want us to get out too far ahead of the curve here and find out that we regret it later. So that's my point, that's all. Thank you.
I just know, I just mentioned to Karen too, that in the past, when the whole idea of precedent has come up, each individual case is decided on its own merits. So we really aren't setting a precedent per se,
Right.
unless, as Karen just referred back to me, that unless we get another case that's exactly the same set of circumstances. So,
the same can be said about the zoning determination, that the zoning determination is for this particular use, for this particular property.
right.
That they would have to come back and argue the exact same thing for me to make the equal determination. So it is case by case, even in that way as well. And Larry, as you point out, the goal is, as we find these maybe potentially inconsistencies in the ordinance, we do correct them. But again, once that determination is made and it does get placed into these, when we do zoning determinations, we use those as we do update the ordinance to ensure that it's more clear in the ordinance.
And in the circumstance of, being if the appearance is that it's the primary education program for the kids, it's very important that you understand that the state does not believe it. We have to. So I understand
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm not saying that-
appearance, but it's just we have to be really careful, because if we say that, we have a problem. The state's going to have an issue with that. And I will tell you, as a parent of high schoolers, I am the primary educator. Let me tell you something, because they come home and they have the questions are for me, not for the parent who can answer those. That's for the tutor at that particular point in time. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. That
And I agree that you aren't the primary educators. So that's not what I'm putting in the record here. So I'm sorry for interrupting.
Do you have anything else you want to offer or do a summary statement or at this point?
no, I don't think so.
Then anything else to be offered? No. Then I guess at this point, we will officially close testimony and open it up for board discussion and then motion. Any further discussion?
I do think that it's a tutoring facility but there may not be another bucket, but I'm not in the opinion that we penalize this group for what they're doing, because you can't have a checkbox for every single different type of business that comes in front of us. So that's.
Okay, is there a motion? Who wants to make the motion?
Apparently I don't know how to, so. I screwed up last time. I didn't say all the right words.
So when we're making our motion,
You were supposed to give me a cheat sheet.
well, I came up with a cheat sheet. I
Yeah, what I
did.
do with it.
But what happened is I didn't get it through Mark and the chair in time. But so here's what I had put together.
I'm not sure if you have draft motions for special exceptions. I think
There's
that for
one.
variances.
All out of order. The important thing is to remember that every applicant that comes before the board has the burden of proving that they've met the criteria required for the request. So with respect to the special exception,
You wrote this, you wrote it as a variance,
I did.
and not as a special
I
exception,
did.
so there ain't a major difference.
Well, the difference is going to be, instead of referring to variance criteria, which is in 164, 161, you would be referring to the criteria for the approval of a special exception in 164, 169, and 164, 170. So the primary thing is if you're going to move approval of the application, you want to find that they met their burden of proof for the conditions of granting a special exception under section 164, 170 with an affirmative statement with respect to those items that are in there. Now you're at a disadvantage because you don't have the code in front of you.
That's okay. But we can use this, the 1, 2,
Do you
and
have-
3.
Yep.
Let me give it a shot. I make a motion to approve the grant of special exception pursuant to section 164, 61A, that the proposal does not adversely affect the general plan for the fiscal development of the district as may embodied in this chapter and in any master plan or portion thereof adopted by the commission. They have proven that there is not an overburden of existing public services, including water, sanitary sewer, public roads, storm drainage, and other public improvements. How am I doing so far?
Good.
It has been proven not to be detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties or the general neighborhood or change the character of the general neighborhood in which the use is proposed, considering the service required at any time of the application, the population, density, character, and number of similar uses. And therefore, the standards set forth for each particular use for which a special exception may be granted have been met.
So then the only other question, and I'm sorry to interrupt the motion, would be if you felt that there were any conditions of approval that needed to be imposed. Because when you look at, if you remember those criteria for determination that you're supposed to consider, which deals with traffic and noise and dust and gas and all that kind of stuff. Your conditions would be to address those issues. But if you do not feel that there are any of those issues to be addressed, then you would not have to.
There are no issues except for they will move forward with the parking questions further from there.
I'm so happy.
Saying I approve no longer works.
I'm just going through it, and before I would second. All in favor? Aye,
I abstain.
opposed,
Abstain.
abstain. So it's passed 2-1. That concludes this particular case, so thank you very much.
Thank you all.
for your project.
Yeah, good luck.
We'll need it. Thank you.
Take care. All right. Very different. We'll move on to case number 22-7, which is a variance request. An application by Jason Weber, the applicant and property owner. You can move up to the front if you like. Thank you. Requesting variance approval to the required minimum 20-foot side yard setback pursuant to city zoning ordinance article 5 R20,000 residential zone 164-26C1 dimensional requirements to allow first, a proposed deck to be 10 feet from the southern property line. Two, the existing house to be 15 feet from the southern property line. Three, the existing house to be 18.3 feet from the northern property line at 890 Sumner Court in Westminster, Maryland. Let me swear you, Mr. Weber, and if you got anybody with you.
Steinberg as well.
Okay, let me raise your hand. You swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mark, staff summary.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Mark D. for the Director of Community Planning and Development. And again, for the record, this application has 9 exhibits. Exhibit 1 being the staff report dated July 5th, 2022 for case 22-7. Exhibit 2 is the Board of Zoning Appeals application. Exhibit 3 is the NSTAT real property search information. Exhibit 4 is the pre-hearing statement narrative. Exhibit 5 is the map of adjacent properties. Exhibit 6, justification statement and house location plan. Exhibit 7, surrounding properties, aerial photos and deck location pictures with explanations. Exhibit 8 is proposed deck plan, and Exhibit 9 is a letter from the adjacent property owner at 891 Sumner Court. On June 9th, 2022, the applicant submitted an application to the board for the property located at 890 Sumner Court, Westminster, Maryland, hereinafter referred to as the property. Requesting a variance to the required minimum 20-foot side yard setback of zoning ordinance as outlined by the chair. The property is zoned R20,000 residential zone. The property contains a single-family detached dwelling unit, a principal and permitted use in the R20 residential zone. The proposed deck is allowed at the property as an accessory structure to the principal single-family detached dwelling unit. The Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxation records indicate the property is owned by Weber Shauna M. Weber Jason R. Property is located at the terminus of Sumner Court, approximately 410 feet east of the West Cliff Court and Sumner Court intersection. The property is surrounded to the north by R10 residential zone, to the south, east, and west R7500 residential zone, and also to the east PB4 plan development for zone. All residential uses surround the property. On July 1st, 2022, the board agenda and board zoning appeals variance case number 22-7 application and staff report was posted on the City of Westminster website for public view. The notice of public hearing for case 22-7 was advertised on Wednesday, June 15th and Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022 in the Carroll County Times. The property was posted stating the time, date, place, and purpose of case 22-7. And on June 20th, 2022, the pre-hearing statement was forwarded to the board by email. As of the date of the staff report, no written request to the board by any interested party requiring the board to visit the property had been submitted. Again, pursuant to zoning ordinance section 164-26C1, the minimum side yard setback is 20 feet and the proposed deck is to be 10 feet from the southern property line. In addition, the existing single-family detached dwelling is 15 feet from the southern property line and 18.3 feet from the northern property line. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a 10 feet variance from the southern property line for the proposed deck, a 5 feet variance to the southern property line for the existing single-family detached dwelling, and a 1.7 feet variance to the northern property line from the required 20-foot side yard setback. The applicant has provided justification statement and house location plan Exhibit 6, surrounding properties, aerial photos, and deck location pictures with explanations, Exhibit 7, and proposed deck plan Exhibit 8 for the board's consideration. Zoning administration concurs with the applicant that the property is oddly shaped and is shaped differently from other properties in the same zoning district and residential development. Furthermore, the single-family detached dwelling appears to have been built in the only reasonable location on the property due to steep slopes on site. Zoning administration also concurs with the applicant that the house is in the same zoning district and residential district. That houses in the same zoning district and residential development do not have steep slopes within the side yards that would limit use of the side yards similar to the side yards of the property. And again, the applicant has provided a statement supporting the variance from the adjacent property, 891 Sumner Court. And this property is the property to the south and is the most impacted of the proposed deck going to the side yard setback. With that, zoning administration recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals carefully review the variance request and provide a finding of fact pursuant to section 164, 161A3, A1, 2, 3 to either approve with conditions or disapprove the applicant's request. That completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Board have any questions so far? No questions. So we enter the application and your summary into, for the record, at Exhibit 1. Okay, Mr. Whip. Well, I'm sorry.
Are you gonna do the same, or did I miss it?
I missed it. Yeah, I went through them first.
Sorry, thanks.
Okay. All right, Mr. Weber.
Thank you. I know, given obviously the 4th of July holiday just occurred, I thank you all actually for allowing us to come here today. It's been a process. In receiving from Mr. Depot the exhibits that we had submitted, I had some concerns about the quality of the photos, and I wanted to supplement, and I guess that would make them Exhibit 10, which are exact. They are the color 4x6 of the black and whites that you all have received, if I may.
Sure.
And they are in the order in which they were presented originally as well. And I think that in all honesty, this is one of those scenarios in which a picture will be far more than appropriate than 1,000 words. This property is, I've never seen anything quite like it. And basically it was the leftover from a number of different developments, some of which I didn't recognize until we went through this process. My wife and I bought this property in 2012. It was originally built in 2004. This property touches properties on 3 other streets, not just ours. But to the north of us is Cypress Court, to the south of us is Fanny's Meadow, and of course there's Sumner Court all around us. The topography of this property is extreme and extraordinary all at the same time. The house literally is on probably the only flat ground in existence on the entire property. When we first purchased this property, it had lain dormant for about a year. We undertook the process of trying to recapture the property from nature. And it's taken us a good while to get to this point. We have put in retaining walls. We have put in all sorts of things trying to take care of things like soil erosion and runoff. We have finally, after all this time, gotten to that portion of the property. to the south side. And we recognized that one of the things that we needed to do over there was landscape. We can't do that without water. The two sources currently of water that we currently have, one is in the garage, which is in the far north part of the house, and on the back side of the property as well, similarly situated. To get water from either of those sources to the area in question becomes probably a 300 or 400 foot hose. We had undertaken prior to the process of building this deck, we had a door installed in the basement of our house and a spigot attached to the outside of that door. The whole purpose, of course, to be, let's put a deck here so that we can get to the outside. And for that, let me back up a second. The whole purpose of this is the basement of our house is not ground level. Basement of our house is 8 feet above the ground at that point. So simply having a door and a spigot doesn't do us any good without any ability to actually access the ground. And that's the purpose of this deck. The size of the deck was of less concern to us, except that because again of the topography and rocks and trees and everything else that's there, the people who were building it had basically said, it doesn't matter whether you build a 4-foot deck, because again, for us, the purpose was getting to the ground with a hose. But the builder basically said, for the amount of material it's going to take to do the things you need to do, it doesn't matter whether you build a 4-foot deck or a 12-foot deck. It's going to be the same cost. It's going to be the same materials. Okay, so then finally, and we had done a survey prior just to know where the property lines were. And then unfortunately, in this process and dealing with Mr. Depot, and first and foremost, the whole deck was the idea here. That was the whole purpose for the variance. Unfortunately, in our discussions with Mr. Depot, we came to recognize that the other two variances became equally necessary, given that we didn't realize at any point that our house itself was in the setback. We just didn't know that. It was never made known to us prior. It was never an issue at the time that we had purchased the property. We had no reason to know it. So we figured now we just needed to clean this up. So the topography and the layout of the property, I think, shows the sort of unusual, extraordinary circumstances surrounding the property. What does that mean? Without this variance, I think it puts us in a position where quite literally there's an entire aspect to our property that we can't really even utilize. And I think that puts us at a disadvantage to other homeowners in the area, notwithstanding that there are wraparound porches on several of the houses in the neighborhood. We're certainly not trying to do that because, again, we'd have to put it on stilts. The third component here is I think, about the effect to adjacent properties. And first and foremost, Mr. Steinberg has been gracious enough to come here and in fact had already signed a statement. But again, the photos sort of show you that the layout of our properties together, Mr. Steinberg's back half of his house is well in front of the front half of my house. In fact, I'd have to walk out probably 30 or 40 feet in front of my house to see his house. At the site of where we're trying to put this deck, we didn't go out with a tape measure. We didn't use Google, or we use Google for everything. The distance is approximately 130 feet from the site of the deck to Mr. Steinberg's house. And given some of the photos are showing that the vantage point from the door, there's nothing visible. There are no houses, there are no people. So we're really hopeful that the criteria of variance have been met. I will rely simply for the purposes of brevity on our statement and photographs submitted. And if there are any questions that this board has, I'm absolutely willing to answer.
Questions? I have one. I'd like to ask Mark. Is there any record in the city that shows the situation that Mr. Weber described about the absence of a setback?
He obtained the proper permits for the house. The house was approved.
Bear in mind, we did not
The
build the
house,
house.
the house received its proper permits issued by the county, signed off by the city. We approved use and occupancy. So the city's action, we did approve this house as it is today. And again, if it wasn't for the deck, he'd be moving forward. It would be, we provided the approval for the house itself. So it was just a good way to clean up the situation, since we were coming before for the deck. So.
Okay.
I have no questions. Everything is laid out so I can understand it. So
Fantastic.
Okay. I don't think I have any further
You probably
questions.
had questions for your home builder.
I have questions for the people who chose to put the house there in the first place. And it's been entertaining, but on the one hand, being on the high end of that, the views are extraordinary.
Sure.
The maintenance of that portion of the property is interesting. A Sherpa and a goat probably help. But that is part of the process of what we're also going through. The hope is to put a path along that side of the house as well. We did find, I wish I were joking, I'm not. We did find a bit of level ground in looking through this side yard area. And everything that we've done to this point has been about sort of advancing the aesthetic of the neighborhood through our house. We want to continue doing that. And unfortunately, we've run into this huge snag.
I guess I would ask one question because it's just curious to me more than anything else. When I look at the diagram attached at attachment 5 here, which shows your deck and what you want to come down to and the pathway you're talking about making, where does that end up? Where's the pathway end up?
That pathway there is it's going to be into a hill. So they're going to basically have to put a landing, dig out a landing into the side of a hill. And the slope was fairly extreme right up against the house. So the original idea was to extend beyond where we're even contemplating doing now, because we could then bring it into land that was a little bit easier to maneuver in. We ran into a problem with the county about 12 feet, I think because of utility line or some, so we said, okay, we'll back off of 12. 8 feet is going to have to just be where we're going to go. It's going to end up being just about at the front of the house where that landing will end up being, but in the side, in the ground.
Okay.
And the end result is that's where the path is going to end with your approval. Now, the next phase would take that path and go around the house to the back.
Okay.
It's an undertaking.
Okay. It was more of a curiosity in terms of how this whole thing.
Sitting there,
I'm sorry.
you see how the computer's sitting up there? That's about the angle of his side and backyard. Compared to like mine, his goes like this. Mine's that way. It's really the next port before it flattens out.
Wow.
So it's a tremendous safety issue for him to be able to come down the hill. And we really only have the 3 owners of the backyard, and they have accepted this to be done. The rabbits, the squirrels, and the deer said, please do. Because when you sit out there, whatever you drop down, we will clean up.
That's a good thing.
So once again, it's a tremendous safety issue to allow him to come down, because
There's gonna be
no loss on my side at all.
a pretty steep staircase.
No loss.
From that point, the hope is that it's going to be a little bit further down the slope. So will it be steep? Yes, but it will be moderate because it will only need to go a certain distance.
Certain distance, okay,
And again, that's just to create the landing for the stairs.
right.
Where we can get into that area where we couldn't necessarily build is a bit more, it's a bit more accessible for a path.
Okay, I have no other questions. Anything else you want to add or do a summary or anything?
Yeah, I think I'll rely on the pre-hearing statement and the photographs. Again, I think it speaks for itself.
I think your.
I thank you for your
partner here
consideration.
wants to make a statement, so just say your name and go ahead.
Pop-up dandelion. I'm the backyard weed. No, Patrick Steinberg, 890 Sumner Court. But does this mean both of us will be banged up by an update Department of Assessments and Taxation then? Since we're giving up the yard switches?
I can't make any comment to that. Mark, you feel you can comment to that? I don't think so.
You have to take that up with that stat
I
itself.
mean, typically, anytime you do an improvement to your house, I'll speak from a personal
Oh,
experience.
sure, that'll affect me.
Yeah, then that's what's gonna happen.
Above my pay grade to make it.
Whatever they need to do, it's tremendous safety issue that has to be done. But it's like I said, saw that computer sitting up there, that is about the angle from the top.
It looked pretty steep in the photo.
It is extremely steep.
It's,
Sometimes even the rabbits, birds, and squirrels, after a rainy day, they say, who put ice skates on us? Why did you put rolling skates on us? How come we're sliding down the hill? So let him come down to the flat side. It's well needed.
At the same time. Okay, we'll close testimony then. And any further discussion amongst the board?
Not for me.
You did such a good job. You want to take a shot?
Oh my, no, it's Larry's turn.
My turn.
You want to do it? Make a
Yeah,
motion? Is there a motion?
No pressure.
No pressure. I'm just, kick me under the table if I make a mistake.
I'll have to take the next one.
Yeah, you will. I move that we accept the petition for the 3 variances to Mr. Weber's property on 890 Sumner Street Court. In terms, I think that amongst the testimony, the statement for this board and the photographs, I think he has clearly shown that there's exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that apply to his property that would allow for such variances. I think that such a variance would be necessary for the preservation, enjoyment, and substantial property rights, as the witnesses have said that there is a steep slope to the property, and certainly to be able to use the exterior water faucets and other parts of his property. I think the deck on that particular variance is a reasonable use of the property. And I think certainly with the statements by the neighbor, can't remember your name, sorry, but anyway, that authorizing such a variance when substantially cause a detriment to adjacent properties. So, and Therefore, I ask that this motion be passed.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I did okay, Madam?
Unanimously approved.
From my vantage point, it was.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you all.
Next year, I'll be here like asking for goats to be on his property.
Could take off point for hang gliding or something.
Look, I had started with Mr. Depot saying, is there any reason to actually have people come out for a field trip? Because it's sort of not to be believed. In point of fact, you know, there are kids who try to come up our driveway in the winter to use our driveway as a sledding area. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Or in the
again,
summer,
the
we'll
driveway is the same,
Yeah.
about the same angle, come up and down. What a tremendous it is at that house.
Yeah.
Where I have the smallest house and the largest yard, he's got one of the largest houses and the smallest property round.
Well, I as an infantry officer have been taught, don't take on hills like that. So anyway.
Yeah, but
Unfortunately, my 4-star has,
it's our area.
has ordered me to do
The Fenby
exactly
Farm,
that.
we're down on Tahoma, where the 3 golf courses used to be.
That's right.
That's where we're at. So what a big deal, you know, that they had to cut them areas up. to
Thank you.
build
Thank
houses.
you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Good, thank you.
Take care.
Always, you too. And like I said, you may want to get the young ones to get paper proof if something happens to them. Compared to, we're the last generation to grow up with it.
We'll get it. All right, let's move on to our final. Anybody need a break? Before?
No?
Need a break? Mark? We're good? Okay. Final case tonight, case number 22-8, which is a variance request. An application by Mary Eastwood, the applicant and property owner requesting variance approval to the required minimum 8-foot side yard setback pursuant to city ordinance Article 7, R 7500 residential zone, 164-37C1. Dimensional requirements to allow an addition to be 6 feet from the property line at 72 West Green Street in Westminster, Maryland. Mr. Depot for
Thank you. Third and final time tonight.
city summary.
Again, for the record, Mark Depot, Director of Youth Plan Development. Also for the record, exhibits that are part of this application. Exhibit 1 is the Board of Zoning Appeals variance case 22-8 staff report dated July 5th, 2022. Exhibit 2 is a Board of Zoning Appeals application. Exhibit 3 is SDAT real property search information. Exhibit 4, pre-hearing statement narrative. Exhibit 5, map of adjacent properties. Exhibit 6, property of existing structure pictures. Exhibit 7, project narrative and elevation. Exhibit 8, a letter from the adjacent property owner at 74 West Green Street. On June 10th, 2022, the applicant submitted an application to the board for the property located at 72 West Green Street, Westminster, Maryland, hereinafter referred to as the property. Requesting a variance to the required minimum 8-yard setback. The property is zoned R7500 residential zone. The property currently contains a single-family detached dwelling unit, which is a permitted principal use on the R7500 residential zone. The Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxation estimate records indicate the property is owned by Eastwood Gary K. and Eastwood Mary E. The property is located approximately 60 feet southeast from the Maryland Avenue and West Green Street intersection. The property is surrounded on the north, south, and west by R7500 residential zone and to the east by the DB downtown business zone. On July 1st, 2022, the board agenda and Board of Zoning Appeals variance case 22-8 application and staff report were posted on the City of Westminster website for public view. The notice of public hearing for case 22-8 was advertised on Wednesday, June 15th and Wednesday, June 22nd, 2022 in the Carroll County Times. The property was posted stating the time, date, place, and purpose of the case 22-8 hearing. And on June 20th, 2022, the pre-hearing statement was forwarded to the board via email. As of the date of the staff report, no written request to the board by any interested party requiring the board to visit the property have been submitted. Pursuant to zoning ordinance section 164-37C1, the minimum side yard setback is 8 feet, and the proposed addition is to be 6 feet from the northern property line. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a 2 feet variance to the southern property line for the proposed addition from the required 8 feet side yard setback. The applicant has provided pictures of the property and existing structure, which is Exhibit 6, and a project narrative and elevations of Exhibit 7 for the board's consideration. I'm not going to address the comments by the applicant. The applicant is here to comment on their submission. Zoning administration would like to make the board aware of the fact that the existing single-family detached dwelling or house was built prior to the adoption of the zoning ordinance. According to ESTAT, the house was built in 1929. The house itself is currently 6 feet from the northern property line, and the requested addition is to be 6 feet from the northern property line as well. Other properties, both adjacent and within the surrounding area on the same street and located within the same zoning district, appear to have houses that were built prior to the adoption of zoning ordinance, where the houses are also located within the current 8 feet setback of the R7500 zoning district. The applicant has provided the letter from the adjacent property owner at 74 West Green Street, in which the adjacent property owner states, "We have no concerns with the proposed addition as it has been presented to us by Gary and Mary Eastward of 72 West Green Street, and will raise no complaints regarding the proposed addition." 72 West Green Street is the property to the north and is impacted the most with the variance request to the northern property line. Just drop this down. With that, zoning administration recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals carefully review the variance request and provide a finding of fact pursuant to section 164, 161A, 3A, 1, 2, 3, to either approve with conditions, or disapprove the applicant's request. That completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
I don't have any.
No questions. Let me swear you in. We'll get your testimony on the record. You're going to testify.
Just in case.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Eastwood, it's on you.
Okay, so as Mark Depo, thank you for having us here tonight, by the way. But as he mentioned, the house is currently built 6 feet off the property line. The addition that we are proposing will go out 14 feet, just extending the back of the house, and then 23 feet across the back of the house. So we're not actually asking to go any further over. We just want to continue the house as it exists. And it is going to span a kitchen. So you can't move it over because the kitchen needs to be all in one line across that new addition. And I think you have pictures of all of that. So complying with the 8-foot setback would impose a severe restriction on the enjoyment and substantial property rights possessed by other properties, in that it would result in an interrupted, discontinuous kitchen layout not seen in other properties.
So you're gonna read all the words that I gave you?
I don't know, I guess.
That's all right.
That was enough. I did that one.
Okay.
Yeah, in my own words.
Maybe it's just me, but I had a little difficulty trying to identify where those two windows were from the other pictures.
Yeah, I'm not sure how those pictures, that's from my other application. I did a separate application for historic tax credit.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's kind of why I didn't submit the pictures for this project or for this hearing.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, that's a good point. They have been for the HDC, for the addition and tax credit, the HDC approved the tax credit and felt that the addition as proposed met the standards for their review and approval.
Okay.
That one window in the picture is going to go away. It's going to be filled in.
Mhm.
It looks to me like a pretty straightforward addition for what you want to do, and going to certainly fit within that property pretty well. So I don't have any further questions. Any further questions from the board?
I just more of a curiosity on the second floor, the deck itself, there looks like a box outside the door, just, is it?
That's the laundry chute.
Oh, okay, yeah, you mentioned that, yeah. I
Okay.
got- yeah. Gotcha.
You're a good architect.
Best.
I have no question. That is pretty straightforward.
So that tree stump is still there? It's going to stay there?
Yep, I'm gonna carve it. It's gonna be carving
Cool.
eventually.
That's the cylinder at the bottom of the steps.
Yeah,
Right,
Right.
that tree was destroyed in the tornado.
Act as a railing
Through.
somewhat. You can lean on it.
we just missed it, or it just missed that.
No, it took out every single mature tree we had.
Oh, wow.
It was bad. We made what paper was that? Washington Times?
The Washington Post.
Washington Post, our house, one of the trees in the back. A very, very old pine tree was just knocked over like a toothpick.
All right. Do you have, I guess, any summary or final statements you want to make?
No.
Dean, you want to add anything?
You mentioned that it's, maybe Larry, you mentioned that it seemed like a straightforward addition.
I did.
Ed, you did.
Yeah.
Well, if compliance with the setback was required, it wouldn't be straightforward. It would be jogged over. And really, it really wouldn't functionally work.
I can see that from what you provided.
Yeah. All right, it's my turn to make
Yep.
a motion.
Go for it.
See if you can get it right.
This might be the hardest one. Based on the applicant's statements and witness testimony, there are an exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that have been met, so that the intended use of the property can be function as described and not interfere with other properties in the area. The variance is necessary in order to preserve the enjoyment and substantial property rights possessed by other properties in the zone. I can recall separately at the sideline here, we've had several other requests for residents on that street that all face pretty much the same set of circumstances. And I think we favorably approved those as well. And the authorizing of such a variance will not be of any substantial detriment to adjacent properties. As a matter of fact, it will obviously, it seems to be, improve the overall property. With that, I make a motion that we approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Unanimously approved. Good job. Thank you very much for your time. Good luck with the project.
Thank you for your consideration.
Mark, I don't think we have any other business, do we? Then
Good night.
there we are
Good night.
adjourned.
I think that's it.
I don't know if we have a case, but don't forget I can't be here now.
Don't know yet, yeah, but I saw you